how I did during the second month of the Tinder project, one of my biggest dating horror stories, and when is the best time to sleep with a man. We'll see you right after this. G'day and welcome to the Tinder Project, the podcast where a straight Aussie man attempts to survive 365 days dating online as an American woman. I'm your host, Mark Rosenfeld, Australia's dating coach for women. I'm here with my sidekick, self-love coach, Teal Elisabeth, and together we have one mission: to make meeting good men fun and easy for you. Let's give it a whirl. Teal!
This enthusiasm just gets more and more each week. I love it.
You look slightly more tanned than you did last week.
I have a secret to admit. Yes, I have homework from my midwives, and they literally tell me we need you out sunbathing to get your vitamin D. They say vitamin D supplements aren't going to cut it. We need you out in the sun, which I'm like, okay, yep. Apparently this is the phase of building collagen and building the bones and the calcium and all that. So I have been taking the day to answer client messages and lay in the sun all day. It's been fabulous.
All day? You've been in the sun?
Well,
How many hours have you been out in the sun, Teal? I have a sneaking suspicion that you would be out in the sun regardless. Tell me I'm wrong. Are you a bit of a sunbather in general? I get the impression.
No, I'm actually not. I know, but I tend to exaggerate. It was about 15 minutes. I'm really pale. And I don't want to burn.
I'm even more pale than Teal, so to all our listeners, we recommend sunbathing for no more than 15 minutes. That's about as long as Teal and I can last in direct sunlight.
Oh, it really lifts the spirits, and hopefully it's lifting my baby's spirits too.
How are you? Is the pregnancy going well?
It's going really well. I feel so blessed and so grateful that everything's going smoothly. Yeah, and how's your little one? Still trucking along?
She's beautiful. Yeah, she's getting more chatty. She had one of her vaccinations yesterday, so her leg's a little bit red, so we felt bad for her. But I have to say, this vaccination was nowhere near as bad as the last one. The last one was 20 minutes, which could be a lot worse than that, to be fair. I mean, I've heard of all-day, multiple-day reactions. But this was, the last one was 20 minutes of sort of screaming bloody murder. Yesterday it was 10 seconds, and then she's been a bit uncomfortable and sleepy, and a little bit warm on the legs, so I sort of was worried she had an infection or something, but she's not running a fever. She seems completely fine, so she's good. We're excited to get the vaccinations over. I always feel a little bit bad kind of taking her there, but I figure it's the right thing to do. Yes. Shall I give you my update on the project?
Hard thing to being a parent. Yes, let's hear it.
Shall we dive into it? So, Teal, I have the August numbers, which is very exciting. You know how I love the numbers and the tracking.
Yeah.
It's not all I'm about.
I'm getting more excited about the numbers too, the more you're sharing these numbers.
Good. I'm glad the passion is coming across. So I'm going to bring up my few little numbers here for August. So, in the month of August, I was only running one profile in August. In the month of August, I viewed 61 profiles, as in I looked at 61 men's profiles. 2 a day, roughly. In that time, we actually liked and therefore matched, because we're using the paid version, so we're taking people from the likes queue. So everyone we're looking at has already liked us. So we liked back 35 out of 61, Teal, which is over 50%. Over 50%. That number might be crazy to you guys sitting at home. Yeah, it's kind of insane, actually, because I say to my clients, if you guys can hit 20%, that's brilliant. That's kind of my ideal for clients. It's not always possible. We've got to refine the profiles a little bit to kind of help them hit it and feel okay about it. But 20% is damn solid. So 50% is actually insane. We had a good run, I think. We set up the profile really well. It kind of shows what's possible. And obviously, we're keeping an open mind to different people. These are people who have pretty good profiles themselves and have put in effort. So 35 out of 61. We had conversations with 32. So this month we were starting some conversations and letting the guys start others. About 2/3 of the conversations were started by the guys and about 1/3 by us. So we had 32 conversations out of 35 matches. So most of the people we chatted to that we matched with. Here's the cool part. Of those 32, we gave our number to 16.
Wow.
Okay. Pretty good, right? 16
Yeah.
proceeded to, we gave our number to 16. Now, out of 16, could you guess how many followed through, finished the loop, and gave us the phone call? Out of 16, what do you reckon?
I'm just going to follow along with these numbers and go with 8. Half of that.
13.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, you are doing something right here. Definitely.
Pretty solid. And I think we saw a similar number the previous month, between about 60 and 75%. Now, this is the ideal. Obviously, I'm coaching this every day. So if you're listening at home, if you're kind of getting half that and you're working up towards that, you're thinking, oh, about maybe 40% of the guys I give my number, 45 are getting on the phone with me. That's pretty bloody good. You know, that's getting up there. You can be excited about that. When you really dial this in, you'll find that the majority, you can move over there. It takes a little bit of finesse, is the word that I really like that Teal used. It takes a little bit of finesse, a little bit of man training, and a little bit of timing. And I think as I go through this more, there's a really interesting, I can't remember if I talked to you about this, Teal, but there's an energetic, think of it as like a peak. It kind of starts and then it goes up and it peaks and then it comes down. And you got to kind of feel when that peak is, because that peak of energy is when the guy is the most into you and the most likely to follow through with the call. If you text too long, inevitably, no matter how wonderfully amazing, spectacular of a texter you are, it just gets boring. It's text message. It's like not what our brains are designed to respond to. But obviously, if you do it on the first message, 9 times out of 10, you've not created enough separation of yourself from the other people online for the guy to go, okay, there's plenty of women here, why should I call you out of all of them? So there's a sweet spot, and it's typically between 2 and 8 exchanges. Most of the time it's in that window where the energy kind of peaks, and if you keep texting after that, it slowly trails away. So I think the art that I'm finding of really mastering getting plenty of dates offline from not talking to that many people is in just identifying that sweet spot, creating it first of all by having good energy yourself, and then identifying it. And if you can identify it, and even I don't get it perfect, so it's sort of a little bit of a field guessing game for me. If you can get that right, you can get that phone call percentage up pretty high, as in the percentage of guys that you give your number to, and remember you can give them a second phone number if you're worried about privacy, the percentage of guys that you give your number to, decent chunky majority are following through and calling, not just calling, but calling when you have set them up to do so. Mm-hmm. So 13 for the month. Final results, Teal.
I love it. This really, I hope, brings some inspiration and hope to our listeners that there are good men that are ready to follow through, that want to actually take this off the apps. It's not just a swiping fest all the time. This is really good. Really, really good. I am curious, because you are a man as a woman connecting to men, is there some subjectivity that, maybe that's not the right word. The attractiveness factor is a piece, right? And because you're not an actual woman investing in, wow, this really could be someone and I have to feel attracted to them to want to actually talk to them, are you taking that into account as well? Like, do they seem like attractive men, or are we just picking all the low lives that are really sweet but are really not attractive?
What's wrong with homeless men? Don't be, you have homelessism, Teal.
I didn't say homeless. I did not say homeless.
I'm just joking. I'm just kidding, guys. No, so I have my clients help me with that, actually, because I do most of my demos live with clients, and they watch and they observe and we learn some things in it. So typically for my 20 minutes a day, they are with me. So I'll say, ladies, okay, what do you think of these profiles? Who would you give a chance to? Who wouldn't you to? So I've got women with me when I'm doing this 95 times out of 100, probably 98 really. So I do have a little vetting team that helps me make the decisions.
Got it.
Yes.
That's awesome. Okay.
And we're aiming for that, like at least sort of a 5, 6 out of 10 is kind of what we're aiming for. Now, sometimes you'll have a day where you go through 10 profiles and you'll just have a batch where you go, oh, what is this Tuesday? This is a disaster. Like, what is happening today? And you might get 1 out of 10 that day. So that's 10%. But then we'll have other days where we go, we had 4 out of 6 today. 4 out of 6 were like, yeah, this is a decent-ish person. Now, are they all, for example, the perfect height, or if you're attracted to like the perfect race, or the perfect ethnicity, or the perfect job, or the perfect like X thing? No, there are a variety of successful, cool people who all have their own little way of showing themselves off. Some are outdoorsy, some are professional, some are just look like genuinely good people, some have dogs, some have cats, some have neither. There's a whole mix. So I'm not filtering for super specific things like that. It's really the approach of, okay, who would we talk to at a party, not be grossed out by, at least could be a little bit curious about, and then we go from there with the phone call. And once you're actually speaking to someone, then you can be a lot more, I suppose, discriminative, it might be the good word for it, to kind of say, this is who I connect with, this is who I don't. But we don't want to be too picky before that point, because it's so easy for our brain to try to look at all these photos, all these hundreds of photos, and be so overwhelmed that it just picks the one person or two people that it thinks are our quote-unquote type, which is usually the worst way to pick people online. So I'm sort of putting that aspect of our brain aside and just saying, hey, let's see if we can hit at least 20% of these people, the 20% best of these people. Somehow we hit over 50, and that's crazy, but we try to hit at least 20 every day.
Keep it up. What you're doing is working. This is exciting. Thanks for the update.
What, do you have any questions or any other curiosities on this, Teal?
I think that was my main question. You answered that really well, and
Okay.
I think that's going
How
to be
are
a
we
big
doing?
question for the listeners too. Yeah, but what I actually want to know more of is your dating horror story, because you cleverly left that out and just left me high and dry, feeling embarrassed on our last one.
I was thinking we're kind of running short on time this week. Maybe we kick it to
Oh, this week? No. We've got time. We've got time to hear this. But I did want to admit, but no, I'll
go
say that for later. You go ahead.
so
I
that
want to
for
hear
later.
this.
All right. So this was back, I must have been 22 at the time, perhaps. Really early dating for me. I was still going out a ton. Still trying to build up my social skills. Still really just trying to improve myself. And I hadn't met that many women I was attracted to yet. But I'd started to meet a couple. That I said, no, this woman's really attractive. Or I called them girls at the time because I was 23, they were sort of 20, 19, 21, that sort of age group. So it was pretty young women. Anyway, I was at a place, and anyone who's Aussie will know the place and probably laugh at this, back in like the early, late 2000s, or is it early 2010s? It's called the Regatta. It still exists today. It was upgraded significantly during there was a tangent, but there was all these massive floods in Brisbane in 2011, and the whole place got wrecked, and they completely upgraded everything because they said, we no longer want to attract this terrible crowd we've been attracting. We're going to upgrade the whole joint. But anyway, I was there before they upgraded it during the best of times, and the place was kind of a mess. But you'd meet some fascinating people there. It was crazily busy, like can't move around busy every Wednesday night. And I met this woman there and got chatting to her in an area called the Boat Shed. The Brisbaneites will know it. Anyway, we got chatting, and it turned out, she was so attractive. She had this beautiful kind of gingery red hair, brilliant smile, very pretty eyes. I was into her from the get-go. So we got chatting, and I was still pretty nervous, but, I was enjoying the conversation with her. And we got chatting, and eventually she said, look, I'm actually not, here for much longer. I'm from down south. And I went, yeah, cool. Okay. Tell me more about that. And she went, I'm actually traveling up from Tasmania. Now, for those that don't know, the Aussies in the room, Tasmania, it's a bit of an interesting place. But you know what? This woman was so beautiful and so attractive. I was 100% okay with that. So I said, yep, cool, Tasmania, love it. So we connected, and we seemed to like have a good connection, enjoyed talking to each other. And because she was kind of leaving the next day or two, there wasn't really time to take her out. So took her number, started calling her. Now, she was not due to return up to Queensland for, I think it was about 10 to 12 weeks, about 3 months. So I was really into her, and I was keeping her, I was calling her a couple of times a week. I would text her a lot, and we started to get kind of close. It got to the point where we're chatting a few times a week. We were planning dates forward. I was thinking about her, quite a regular periodicals throughout the day. And her name was Rachel, actually. And so I was starting to think about Rachel more and more kind of as the weeks went on, and we were talking about like what we do. Some sexting got involved. It was getting pretty spicy, and we were multi-dating at the time. We kind of knew that. And so I was dating one other woman. But I was really into Rachel. So I was starting to think, Rachel's bloody amazing. Like, this could be actually someone I could potentially see myself committing to. We talked about what we wanted for the future, blah, blah, blah. So things are going really well. And she started to plan her trip to come back up. And we basically said, okay, we're going to connect. We're going to go on this big long day date. We're going to go down to South Bank. We're going to hang out all day. I was hoping that I could take her back to my place later in the evening and we'd hang out there. She was staying at a hotel, but we planned to connect for a lot to it. So she arrives. This was, as I say, about 10 weeks after we met. She arrives and we decide to meet up down at South Bank to kind of start our date. And immediately as this date kind of started, I couldn't put my finger on what it was, but we weren't connecting the way we were connecting over the phone.
Oh, I
Something was off. Yeah, it was... something was just off. And I couldn't figure out why, because she was there, but she was kind of like a little bit cold almost. And she didn't seem to be having much fun. I sort of suggested a couple of things we could do. She sort of like shrugged and didn't seem particularly into the ideas. So I'm starting to feel more and more insecure. I've been waiting for this moment for like 10 weeks, and this is pretty much one of the first women I've ever dated. Certainly one of the first women that I was really attracted to. So I'm just thinking in my head, I'm starting to spin. I'm going, what's going on? This is, something's off here. And I'm thinking, here's my logic at the time. I'm thinking, okay, maybe she's just like losing attraction for me for some reason. And that was most of my paradigms at the time. So I'm thinking, okay, I guess I've got to like do some stuff to be more attractive and to be more interesting. Maybe I need to be like more in my masculine and take more of the leadership role, maybe be more decisive, because I'd read a lot about how important that was and how women found it attractive. So I sort of started saying, okay, come on, like we're going to go do this now. And I can't remember exactly what the idea was. This was over a decade ago now. That ages me, doesn't it? But I started to try to take more of the lead in the date. So that was my plan. I said, all right, I'm going to be more decisive, try to be more attractive here. And it didn't seem to be working. She just kind of, I remember saying, all right, come on, we're going to head down here. We're going to go get, I think it was like there was something, it wasn't the museum, but there was something in that area. I was like, all right, come on, we're going to go check this out. It's going to be great. And she's like, yeah, I don't really know. Maybe we like jump on the train and go somewhere else. I was like, nope, come on, we're going to go do this. Let's go do that. And eventually, so we get to I think the logic in the end, Teal, was that we decided we were going to take the train to the next place, which was kind of like the place I suggested, but I really didn't want to take the train for some reason. But she was so insistent, and I was just getting so insecure. I'm like, what is going on here? Like, I have no lead over this date. I'm feeling really insecure about what's happening, and I can feel the tension is just like getting weird. So we end up at the train station, and I'm spinning at this point because I'm like, what do I do here? We're at the train station, and she basically kind of tried to, I guess, take the lead as well. And she's like, all right, come on, let's get on the train. And the train pulls up and she gets on the train. I was like, nah, Rach, come on, we're going this way. I'm still on the platform. And she's on the train. She's like, come on, we're going this way. I'm like, no, come on, let's go down here. I think I wanted to get to the next carriage or something, or I wanted to move forward. I was like, no, come on, let's go down. And then I realized what was happening. I was like, fuck, the train doors are about to shut.
Oh my gosh.
And I had this moment of, literally, this is my insecurity at the time. I had this moment of, all right, I can be the beta male and just follow her and do what she says, or I can stick to my guns here and be what I perceived at the time to be the alpha who had some control of the situation. And beep, 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 the train door shut. I was just like, I don't know what's happening here. I don't know what's going on. I don't know. Train leaves the station. And that was the end of the date and the last I ever heard from her.
Oh my gosh.
That was it.
You didn't even you guys didn't text again or call
I mean,
again?
I think from memory, I think I might have sent one text which didn't get a response. I honestly can't remember the exact contents of it.
Oh my
But
gosh.
that was it. That was how 10 to 12 weeks of consistent phone dating and excitement. It went for about an hour. And then she got on the train and I didn't want to follow her, and that was it. That was done.
Wow. Yeah,
Guess she wasn't that into me, hey?
I'm sorry. That's just, she sounds like a bitch. You don't deserve her.
Thanks for validating me, Teal. Thanks for that. I don't know what ever happened with that. I'll never know to this day. And I was so embarrassed at the time. I kind of like pretended I wasn't, but I was so embarrassed at the time. Oh, I did something wrong. She wasn't attracted to me for some reason. Then I did more wrong, and I think that was another reason there was no follow up. As I say, I might have sent one text. But after that, I was just like so embarrassed that there's no recovery from that. How do you get over the awkwardness of we were just like had a fight on our first date and she took the train and disappeared? Like I just left in the past.
Better to leave it and let it die on the train track.
Man, that was,
Wow.
I don't think I've ever
Thank you for
told that one
sharing
before.
Oh, but I'm glad you stood up for yourself and you, yeah, didn't just follow her and go, okay, whatever you want. That was good of you to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I don't know if it worked, but it did something.
It's called self-respect.
Still so weird because up until that point, I thought things were going to go so well that day. And I was so excited for that day just to go, yeah, this is going to be a great date. Really looking forward to this. This one, this was kind of, as I say, I was seeing one other woman at the time. But other than that, I said, this is one of the best women that I've really connected with in this whole process. And she disappeared on a train in like an hour. And I went,
That's the thing. Even
okay.
if I was in her shoes and I had been, building it up and building up with this guy and he was so excited and then I get there and I'm like, oh shit, you know what? I'm not actually as into him as I thought. I would still enjoy the day as much as I could, as friends. I'd put you in the friend bucket and I'd say, okay, let's go have some fun as friends. And then if you tried to make a move on me, I'd be like, you know what? I'm sorry. I don't know if this is going to work.
Not feeling
And be
it.
at least nice
Yeah.
about it, right? I don't know. Would you rather have that or would you rather her just be weird all day?
I don't even know, to be honest. Obviously, during the day, it's nicer if you have someone you're connecting with. But if at the end of the day, she says, I think I just see you as a friend, Mark. That's like the dagger in the heart. No, don't say that to me. Please, no, God. Oh,
Okay.
the words
So
of
then she should have
death.
just taken one look at you and gone, okay, damn, I had drunk goggles on. See you later. Not gonna go on this date with you. Would that have been better?
I honestly don't know. Short of like her deciding before the date and making up a reason, like saying, hey, I met someone or I'm just not feeling it anymore or whatever. Short of that, I don't know how she could have got there and change. Essentially, assuming she did change her mind based on something she saw, which I don't know if she did or not, but if that was the case, there's really no good way out of that, is there? There's just like, I'm going to be disappointed and embarrassed no matter what ending that is. But I do think that's a good thing for guys to experience because this is probably a deeper conversation. It might be a topic for another day, but one of the most valuable things for me was all the rejection I went through over and over and over again to build resilience. And it's still a good thing for me to experience in business that I work through a lot. So it just helped me grow as a man. And it's really interesting. I don't know if you chat to many Gen Zers, and I don't know if we even have a ton of you as listeners, but I do think it's one of the challenges for men these days is that rejection is so important to a man's growth, especially romantic rejection and the resilience that comes with it. But when you have viralness, reels, TikTok, and the ability for a rejection from a single woman to provocate throughout the entire school or I suppose college environment, maybe less so, high school environment, it makes you risk averse. And there's more and more studies coming out that are showing how smart Gen Z is and how educated they are, but also how risk averse they are. And I suspect for the men, that's part of it because as a man, it's like you want to be able to take risk and fail at things, hopefully without bringing too much shame or embarrassment to yourself. It's bad enough if her friends laugh at you, let alone the whole school. So I think it's a genuine challenge for young men. And I'm kind of glad that I got to fail so much in an age before smartphones because it gave me the opportunity to just make an absolute ass of myself without it being so public. And now the temptation as a young man, I could totally see is to play it safe a bit more. You don't want to upset a woman. You don't want to make it weird. Certainly don't want her to talk about it to all her followers on social media because most women have more than most men, let's be honest. Bloody hard spot for young men to be in. I don't envy it, but you have a son, so it'll be something that you help him through in the future.
Oh, God. God help me. I'm just hoping I can raise him to be a smart, powerful, beautiful gentleman, to give these ladies something really special. Yeah. That's my goal.
That's very sweet, Teal.
But
I
now let's
like
talk
that.
about something that's a little more risky, a little risque. When to sleep with a man.
Oh,
When to dive into the juiciness of
the
that next level.
the
I'm kind of
fun
curious to hear
times.
your yeah, curious to hear your thoughts as a man, not as a man parading around as a woman. Um,
Yeah.
as a man, when do you think as a man would be the best time to sleep with a woman?
Do you mean for me
And
as a
then as
man?
yeah, you as a man, when like what do you I mean, well, maybe that's an obvious question right away.
Um, yeah, I mean, with respect and consideration, but I'm very much of the opinion that authenticity and honesty rules. So if I'm attracted to a woman, I will usually try to kiss her on the first date. That doesn't mean that I get a kiss, and often it's actually more helpful to get a rejection than a kiss, which we can go into why that is. But I don't want to leave a woman wondering or guessing. As I say, if I'm going to get rejected, I'd rather do it cleanly and then she can reject me, and that's fine. I'll move on. But sex is kind of similar. I feel the vibe and feel the energy, and I'm happy to test sexual compatibility whenever the woman is comfortable to do so. I do think that's important. I've had one partner who waited until exclusivity before sex. The others did not. So I've done both. And the risk, we can talk about this in a little bit, and I think there's a lot of benefits to waiting, but the biggest risk is probably the sexual compatibility side, which you could commit to someone, realize you don't have that, and maybe it's not even at a point where you could work on it. And that can be a little bit of a tricky thing later. I think it's very different for women, but as a man, yeah, I mean, if I'm sexually attracted to someone, I will see if I can kiss her reasonably soon. And if she's okay kissing me, I will sort of assume that she's okay with me going further until she shows or tells me that she's not. I know a woman's rarely going to initiate sex with me, even if she wants it. So if I'm getting subtle green lights, I will go for it. If I'm getting maybes, I'll probably go for it and just be very aware of her signs. And if I'm getting obvious signs that she doesn't want it, then I will stop and wait however many hours or days or weeks or whatever it is feels right in my read of her. Does that make sense too?
Yeah, this is super interesting to hear the man's perspective on this because I know you coach women, so you probably have a different perspective coming, from the women's side. But
Yeah.
I think to hear it from the man's side is really, really eye-opening and important because what I'm picking up as a woman is we want them to be initiating and advancing and invite like pulling that energy towards us because if you weren't doing that then we have to lean into that energy of initiating which just throws off the whole balance of the whole relationship
Right.
dynamic but no, if you do know that is their job, it is their job to initiate and test it and see where things go and how far they can go. It doesn't have to be something that's shady or overly sexualized or they're so obnoxious or ridiculous or call whatever label you want. It's just seeing it as the dance that it is, and that you also have a role in that dance, which is to know your own boundaries and know what feels right to you and play the dance as much as feels right to you every step of the way. So I think this is really, really beautiful what you were sharing there because you're saying you don't want to leave. I love what you said. I don't want to leave them guessing or wondering on that first date, if there's an attraction here. I want to show them very clearly there's an attraction here, and then it's up to you to decide, do I want to reciprocate that attraction or not? Versus, I think a lot of women are like, oh, I don't want to sleep with him too soon. I don't want him to think he can get what he wants and blah, blah, blah. And they become so guarded against that men, if they don't initiate, then you're right. It leaves this like weird gap of, well, what is going on here? What are we exactly? Right? So there is a little bit of a dance that I think has to be played and expecting it and planning for it will make it not be weird or awkward or annoying or obnoxious or whatever it seems to be. Is that
Men's
what I'm
job to
hearing? Oh, that's
initiate.
what I'm interpreting.
Right. I love the saying men's job to initiate, women's job to reject. And that dance is also how the woman feels safe because, if I try to, let's say I attracted to a woman, I like her on the first date and I decide, yep, I'm going to show her, I'm going to go for the kiss. She rejects me. I'm non-reactive about it. I'm totally cool. I say, I enjoyed this. I'd love to see you again. I know when I invite her out on a second date, she feels safe enough with me to either A, want to kiss me or B, is curious enough about me to maybe not want to kiss me yet, but she feels comfortable that her boundaries will be respected even if she doesn't want to kiss me, which is still a good sign.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like a
Yeah.
win-win. And if she clearly was perturbed or put off, she just won't come on the second date. So it actually saves me a lot of time and gives me a lot of clarity on an early date let's say, as I say, try to kiss on the first date. Well, now I have good info for the second date. Okay, she either wants me, might want me, or definitely doesn't want me. There's no kind of gray in there. And I love that clarity. And as I say, it also creates more safety for the woman, in my opinion, because she has seen me reject her once. She's seen how her boundaries have been seen. She felt that. As she feels it a few more times, she's going to feel most likely safer with me. And yeah, I think my personal experience as well is I have never been one, and again, I'm talking more for myself now than men in general, and a lot of men may not be like this. I have never been myself one to do a ton of like disconnected sex with people I don't like as humans. That's not to say I haven't done casual sex. I certainly have. And, you know, I was a stripper, and half the time I was a stripper, I was single. So you put two and two together. But even when, like, I would meet a woman at a show and we'd do something casual, I always I always thought she was cool. It's someone I would hang out with 90 at least % of the time if we weren't having sex. It's like, all right, you're cool. Like I like you. So I think I also gave off that energy, which is why I personally found it a bit of a turn off when women would say, well, I'm not giving you the best thing yet. Because in my head, I was like, I'm here for you. And you think sex is the best thing. Like, you don't see the value I see in yourself. Now, again, I'm not saying that might be a wise strategy against particular men, but on me personally, it was a bit of a turn off because I went, I'm like, yeah, I'm sexually interested in you, but if you think that like delaying sex is going to hook me, I'm like, that's 100% not what I'm here for. So that was kind of that was an anti-strategy against Mark. That one didn't work on me for, whatever reason.
That's beautiful. And also really good insight for women to hear that it's not all about sex, and that's not the main thing that men are always wanting, because I think that narrative gets really distilled into our head of like, men always only want one thing and they're going to come after you for only one thing and you got to hold off on it and not give them the prize and all that stuff. And there is a little bit of truth to that, but there is so much more to it. And yes, with the genuine, I think, downhearted men, good-hearted men, they're not just wanting one thing. They want the whole package.
And yeah, look, as a coach for women, I totally get there's men out there that A, just want sex, or B, might be using sex to get away from their problems. So there are going to be some men that approach with that attitude. And I think online it's a bit different because, when a man is going for sex in real life, especially if he's learned to calibrate by being rejected a few times and read a woman's signals, well, that's the thing. He's reading a woman's signals. So he will go for it when the time is right. He'll back off when the time is right. And women appreciate that and enjoy that 99 times out of 100 in my experience. But online, there's no social cues. There's no social calibration. So it's kind of the laziest, most prehistoric parts of our brain can jump in. And probably every woman listening to this at some point has had either a dick pic or a sex request or a guy that's kind of been up for it. And I can actually show you a couple next week from the Tinder project if you guys are curious that they've subtly angled towards it and then either gotten bored and left the conversation or realized it wasn't going to work. But guys will often either check for openings online to see, is this one up for casual? Is this one more girlfriend material girl? So guys will look for it. And then, what was I going to add? Oh, some guys will just outright ask for it. And there's certain apps where that happen more than others. So I think that's the hard part about apps is apps allow the laziest parts of our brains to flourish. There's no social cues. There's no shame. Like if you walked up to a woman as a man in real life and are like, hey, want to fuck? And, flopped your penis out, you get punched in the face and arrested. But you can do that kind of gross behavior online and there's no social shame and consequences attached to it. So that's why online's kind of a weird environment, and you don't want to take that stuff personally, because if you put 10 men in a room, one of them will just get lazy and do something stupid in the wrong environment. So it's definitely not about you. Yes, it can happen online, and yes, it can make you feel crappy if you have felt used for sex in the past. But don't take it personally. Teal, I'm curious from you in terms of timing. I know we've kind of gone around about this question. If a client comes to you and asks this, how long do I wait from the woman's perspective?
Yeah, I mean, if I were to give a numerical number, I would probably say at least a month or 2 months, if not more. But I'm not super reserved about a specific number because I think like you, it's going to be different depending on the client and depending on what their comfort level is. I think what's more important is for each woman to really ask within themselves, like how much do I trust myself around sex? Because I think that's what it comes down to more than anything. Sex doesn't have to be good or bad in terms of a relationship marker or milestone. It's much more about how we as women are able to internalize it and either take on way too much meaning and get way too attached, or be able to fully drop it and let it be what it is and move on and be more of a casual experience with it. And what I've found is that a lot of women just have a really hard time detaching from sex as an act of just being a casual moment of amazing connection. It turns into something so much bigger that then swallows them up, and they make meaning out of it, and then it becomes very, very heavy too soon. And so I just I gently encourage to push it off longer, more for the sake of protecting our own self from ourself. Not from the man, but from our own self, to not turn into the crazy girl. Because the crazy girl can really start to flare up when we get attached and we get so sexually connected, and then we're like, I need to have babies with him, and now he's not showing up and providing and doing all the things, and oh God, my life is over. So I would say, ladies, really asking yourself, how much do you trust yourself with this relationship of sex?
Yeah, I would agree. I think Teal put a really good point there. If you're the type that can really enjoy sex just for the pleasure straight off the bat, you know, if you're the type that really gets a lot of satisfaction and actual physical pleasure from sex, especially early on, you are in the smaller percentage, perhaps 10, perhaps 20%, who can have sex earlier, and it'll probably go quite well for you. You'll be able to stay more detached. You'll still have your standards in place the next morning. You'll be able to kind of measure sexual compatibility, and the guy will continue to chase just as much in the same way. I think that's hard for a lot of women, as Teal says, and sex can bring up a lot of stuff. So I think it's a safe bet to wait until exclusivity, and it's just a good all-around solid dating strategy to protect yourself. That being said, no matter when you have sex, I will say this, to a 90% degree, the man still needs to wake up to a woman with the same set of standards. Because you can wait till exclusivity, but if you've been this kind of, yep, I'm gonna, let you go if you treat me badly, if you do this or this, I'm out of here. If you're this kind of deeply self-respecting woman that he goes to bed with, and he wakes up and you're now obsessed with him, I know this is a little extreme, but if he's waking up to someone who doesn't respect herself the same way the woman he went to bed with does, exclusivity, 6 months, 12 months, 1 week, it's not going to matter. You've still got to be able to say, even though I have these feelings, this standard still applies. Even though I have that feeling, this boundary will still apply. And I am still willing to walk away if push comes to shove. In my book, I talk about, but I love him versus even though I love him. But I love him is like the feelings win. Even though I love him is the standards and the boundaries win. And it's so important no matter when you have sex. And yes, there's always going to be some dopamine, oxytocin feelings involved. There is for the man too, to a lesser degree. But you've really got to say, okay, whenever I go to bed, there's never 100% guarantee of the future. Yes, you can wait till exclusivity and certainly do your checks and balances over a longer period of time, 12 weeks, for example, 12 dates, something like that. But the biggest piece of security that you can give, other than just a little bit of time, is making sure that you have the same set of standards the next morning. And if you can do that, it really doesn't matter. The timing's way less important.
Yeah, I love that. I do think what you were saying about, men are going to chase you no matter what. And I think there is a little bit of, again, finesse with the when to sleep with him conversation, because as women, it is a big part of what makes us attractive, right? Our sexual essence it's a big turn on. It's a big attractive piece. And if we give that away too soon, it does take away a little bit of the allure, I would say, a little bit of the mystique of what makes us us, and it can kill some of that early flirtatious banter and sexual tension that gets to build. So I think it's important to allow that to build naturally. It is kind of the foreplay leading up to the main event, whereas if we're just like, sure, first date, let's do it, it kind of kills some of the buildup that could be established in those early days that really makes a man go, oh my God, I can't get enough of this woman in all the parts of her personality. And now I can't wait to sleep with her on top of it as a cherry on top. And for me, I think that buildup is kind of part of the fun of the dating process. And I don't want to give that up to be like, sure, yeah, here you go. You can have this too, right off the bat.
Totally. Yeah, I hear that. And I would say if you do decide to have sex earlier, you must do it knowing that there's no end in mind. because you'll see people who say, well, you know, I had sex on the first date or I had sex on the third date and relationship formed, it was totally fine. It's like, yes, those things happen, but they only happen because no one was expecting it to happen. So usually the people are going in with a more casual mindset, and then they have sex a couple of times, they hang out and they realize, oh, we actually really like each other. But you can't go in with that mentality. It's really, really hard to do that. So I think what Teal shared there is very wise, Teal. Thank you for sharing it. And the safe bet is always to just kind of take that time, really measure the guy across your different standards, across his consistency, across your connection, across his skills, his relationship skills that you've seen from him. Because once you've done that, yes, you're going to filter out a few. There will still be a few guys who kind of barrel through and wait for sex. But overall, and especially if you've ever felt used for sex before, I think that's far and away the safest option, whether that is 6 weeks, 12 weeks, a little bit longer, something in that range. You've got to feel it out for yourself.
Yeah. And one last thing I think that I just hear from a lot of clients is the concern about love bombing, where men will come on really hot and heavy in the beginning and then they'll realize, oh shit, I got in too heavy too soon, and they pull way back and leave a woman going, what just happened, right? And get feeling like the rug's been pulled out from under them. And then again, when you are pulling back and holding off on sleeping with a man too soon, it's you're almost protecting yourself from that potentially happening too. Not just for your own self getting attached, but sometimes men can get attached too soon and then go, uh-oh, wait, I don't actually want to be in a relationship, and hurting you on the back end because of that too. So overall, I would say general warning, wait a little bit. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I totally agree. And the whole love bombing thing, it just makes it really messy if you have sex as well. The solution to love bombing is always to slow things down. So if you've had any history of that happening to you, guys moving a bit too quickly, you getting really attached and then letting guys go, early sex is definitely not for you. And I wouldn't recommend it.
Yeah. It's a good conversation though. And again, it's going to be up to each person individually, but I think it's good that we got to flesh this out a little bit. And ladies, if you have any questions, Mark and I are here. We're always here to give a little extra advice and guidance.
We are. You can grab a consult with us if you need one, and we have a website you can support the show on, so make sure you check that out. Teal, that was fun. Really good conversation. I enjoyed that. Did you like my terrible date?
It really is. Yeah.
Was it bad? Was it badder or not as bad as you thought it would be?
I kind of was hoping for it to be a little worse. I'm not gonna lie.
It was a little okay.
Maybe if she pushed you off the train into the rails, and then the subway smacked you. Maybe that would be a horror story.
Oh, wow. I was almost killed, and I had a concussion. Lost a leg, grew it back, and
I've been reading too many thriller books.
First date. You are actually. I've been into those a little bit lately, so I feel you on that. Guys, thanks for joining us, Teal. It's been a pleasure having you here.
Talk to you guys next time.
See you soon on the Tinder Project.